And hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Session 7, The Power of Custom Reporting. My name's Dave Jones, and I'll be conducting this week's presentation. Just a couple of things that we're going to talk about today, and these are the topics that we'll be going through. When we talk about customized reporting, the utility that we use in RMS is referred to as the Report Writer. I'm going to step you through the Report Writer. It's a method, it's a two-step process. The report writer will gather a group of reservations and or guests based on the criteria that you set. Once you've got that list of guests or reservations, you can communicate with them. You can send an EDM, an electronic direct mail campaign. You can send a form letter, in other words, an email, or you can send an SMS from the report writer. The other thing you can do is create custom reports. So the raft of reports available to you in RMS is huge, and you can customize those reports to an extent. In the build screen, you can select the criteria that you want to report on, but every now and then there will be a report that you need that isn't provided in the suite of reports, and the report writer gives you the option to do that. So we're going to go through that in a minute, and these are the sort of things. I know this is a little bit small, particularly if you're watching this on a phone or something, but these are the sort of things that you can put together. You can just put fields and fields and fields of information to create more and more rows in your reports. All of the stuff that we would never think of here at RMS that you might need in your specific quirky little business, and this is the way for you to be able to create that for yourself. They're going to be in the format of an Excel spreadsheet, and the more you know about, it is a bit of a dark art. Excel spreadsheets were something that sort of everybody knew how to use 20 years ago, but now maybe not so much. Maybe we just ask Siri to answer our questions. But for those that are sort of data hungry, those people that love data and love their Excel spreadsheets, these are the sort of things you can produce, pivot tables, pivot charts, all that sort of stuff. So we'll come back to all of that. But for now, let's go into the live system. In the top toolbar here, you'll see that I have created an icon for the report writer. If you're using the report writer a lot, that's probably not a bad idea. If you don't have that icon, what you might want to do is go to the little cogs over here on the right, click on those, go down to utilities. Mine's grayed out because I already have it, but if you don't, you can just drag that up into your example toolbar here and it will be available for you. If you haven't done that, or if you sort of don't really need it that often, you might go in the side menu. You might go down to utilities. Here it is right here. And go down to report writer, which is alphabetically under R. And here it is. So this is the tool we're talking about. Generally speaking, you're going to create a template, and the benefit of a template is you can use this over and over again, so you don't have to go through the building process. It'll be there. You just hit show matches and it will give you an instant result. You can see that I've created a few templates here, but we are going to start from scratch and I'll show you how this is done. The only real compulsory field, mandatory field, is template name. I'm just going to call this test 1. You'll see that the range boundary here says include. So when we start the start of the process, it's going to include everything. This will make more sense in just a moment. The options here are fairly self-evident. You can just go through those and choose the ones you want. If you're doing a report on a group of properties, maybe you look after several properties, they'll all be listed down here, and you can tick the boxes of the ones that you want to get the results from. You might be looking for information from reservations, guests, or guests and reservations. Just depends. Probably the safest one in most cases is to go for both. You'll see that the next column here says from, and this is groups of fields that you can search on. Bottom one is a little bit specialized. It's these top 3 that you're more likely going to want to use. And we'll start with the top one, which is client stats. And there's a couple of really, really handy ones here. And I'm going to give you, I'm going to run through an example now, and I'm going to build a list of clients. And you can see with client stats. Now, just depending whether I'm trying to build a report or whether I'm going to send out a communication, these are really, really handy fields. For example, and I've just got to explain this from the get-go, you'll see the word income here. It's just one of those quirky little things that RMS does. It's not the income of the guest, it's the revenue that you're getting from that guest. So you might want to search by average revenue or total revenue. You can see down the bottom. Let's use average income, for example, and we might say, well, we really just want to send out a communique to people who, they're repeat offenders. They come here all the time. So maybe it would be something like $500 or more. They're the people I want. Or maybe I want to check all of the people that have stayed multiple times. So for example, it might be greater than or equal to, say, 3. It can be whatever you like. And of course, you don't need to necessarily, there's a million ways of searching. I'm just showing you some examples. The report writer is a little bit like Mahjong. It takes 5 minutes to learn, but sort of a lifetime to master. And over the years, you'll discover creative ways to get the results that you need. But let's say, for a start, we're looking for all of the people that have stayed 3 times or more, and we're going to hit this button that says add this statement. A couple of things happen at the same time. As I do that, you'll see that that statement has been added to the statement list. And over here at range boundary, we've got 2 more options, if you like. We've got exclude and only include. So the next one we might go to, let's go down to the from reservation, and we might go to arrival date medium. And now we're going to say that of all of the people that have stayed 3 times or more, we only want to include those that have stayed in the date range. So you might go to this top one and you might pick a physical date range. You could do that. That wouldn't take long. Or you might say, I want one that is greater than or equal to. So you might put a date that's, did it drop off, did it? That is greater than or equal to a specific date. And that might be, say, I don't know, 6 months ago, because maybe I only want to include those reservations that have stayed recently, or maybe less than or equal to, say, once again, 6 months ago. So we're saying, no, we don't want to communicate with the people that have just stayed recently. We want to talk to the ones that have stayed a long time ago. Need to be a little bit careful with some of these. I mean, you don't want a search that's going to include, 50,000 reservations or something. You don't want to sort of push the system that hard. You want to be sensible about it. But let's say in this case, we're going to pick this one. So we're going to now add this statement. The next one we might do is category. So I'm still in reservations, but now I'm down in category. Now, in my case, because I've relabeled category as room type, I need to come down here and choose room type. Just be aware of that. Any of the default field names that you've changed will now have that new name in this list. Now, a little quirk of I'm using a Mac, and sometimes on these Teams meetings, you can't see the contents of my drop-down, but I'm going to try it anyway. You might just help me out, Lizzie. Can you see that drop-down list?
Oh, try again.
Yeah, no, you can't. That's okay. Look, I'll just describe it. So I've got a combination of rooms, apartments, and suites. Now, maybe in the case of a room type, A to Z isn't going to work. Greater than or equal to, all that sort of stuff isn't going to work. So there's a couple of things I could do. I could do a wildcard, and how a wildcard, I'll start off by inserting an asterisk. And then I'm going to type in the word suites and then another asterisk. So this is how we compile a wildcard. So now it's only going to include room types or categories that have the word suites in the name. So I'm going to add that one as well. And let's do one more. Let's go to guests this time, and let's go to region. So we've said that we want all of the people that stayed more than 3 times that stayed during a particular date range, that stayed in a particular room type, and now we're going to say we're going to be specific about where they come from. So we're going to use one called region, and in this case, I'm going to use my region that says 1 to 2 hours drive from this location, and I'm going to add that statement. Now we're going to go through that in just a minute. We're going to talk about regions because there's quite a few people I can hear them saying, my God, I didn't know there was something called 1 to 2 hour drive. We'll go through that. So you can see we started off with a large number of people, and we've sort of done a funnel, and we're going down to a narrower group of people so that we can send a very, very specific message to those people. It can be targeted to their particular situation. Let me just show you and I'll just get out of there for a second. I'm going to get out of there and go back in. We'll just do another very quick one. And this one is, let's say it was everyone who had a reservation and an arrival date that was, say, I don't know, we'll just do another option here. We'll say between, that date and that date, for example. We're going to add that statement. Now, if we are going to send, say, a form letter, we need an email address. And just the way life is, sometimes when we're taking reservations, maybe somebody gives us a dodgy email address, or maybe it's like a booking.com virtual email address, it's tantamount to useless. Or maybe, we didn't have an email address, so we just put a dot in there or didn't put anything at all. So that is going to mess with our send. So the other thing that we can do under guest, we can go to email. And once again, I'm going to use a wildcard. And I'm going to say here, I'm going to put in my asterisk again, asterisk, and then the @ symbol, and then an asterisk. And we're going to add that to the statement. So we're saying we want all of these people here, large number of people, but only include those that have an @ symbol in the email address. So we went to guest, email, but only the emails that have an @. So if you've used a dot, or if it's, whatever, then you'll be able to just use the wildcard of @ symbol, and that is going to clean that list up a lot. All right, now just while we're still talking about regions, I just want to go and have a look at that for a moment. So let's go over here into the side menu. Let's go into setup, all the way down to lookup tables, and I'm going to go to region, which is all the way down there under R. Here it is. Now, just depending on what country you're operating, I'm in Australia, so regions, the default for regions is states, and there you can see them all, but I've actually created my own. And what I've done is, in this section here, just entered now this isn't accurate, I've just, spent about 5 minutes on this, but I've inserted the postcodes, and, if you're in another country, the zip codes or whatever you have over there, of those suburbs which are 1 to 2 hours away from here. But the great thing about this is not always what you include, it's what you exclude. Now, there may be, and I don't want to sound elitist, but there may be certain suburbs that you don't necessarily want to promote your business to. So you'd be able to leave those out. So that would now be a region that you could use, and you could make all sorts of regions that were very, very specific to what you wanted to do. So that's a little side tip there. I'm just going to show you one more. And before I do, while I'm in the setup menu, I'm going to go back to lookup tables. This time I'm going to go to classifications. Now, if you are one of those folks that come to all of these webinars, you would have heard me talk about classifications before. This is a fairly manual thing you can do to classify your guests, and it might be for anything you could think of. It might be because they're a little bit more important than others, or they have a certain interest, anything that's specific about those people that from time to time you would want to group them together. Now, I've got a couple of examples, like people who are interested in fishing or food or surfing or whatever, but I've also put in one for astrophotography. And let's say, and this is actually a fact, let's say your property is in a place that's really, really good for looking into the heavens. It's nice, clear weather all of the time. And you have folks that do come because they want to take photos of the stars or whatever. So I've created one of these. Now, if I was to go into any random guest, let's say Mr. Guest here, and click on him, I can now go to classifications. Just bear in mind, you might have this hidden in field maintenance under users, but I can go into classifications and I can say, well, this guy is an astrophotographer, and now he's been tagged with that. I'll just get out of there. Now, why would this be useful? Let's have a look. If we go back into the report writer, we might say, let's find all of the guests that have a classification of astrophotographer. That's literally all I have to do. And you'll see that I've even got one here called stargazing, which is in fact this template here. That's all it is when I click on stargazing, it's going to bring up all the people that have a classification of astrophotography. Now, how would you get those classifications against the guests? There's a couple of ways. People have come up with some fairly creative ways, such as, you might have a competition and you might say, hey, you can win a free night, but look, you've got to fill out this form, and maybe you tick the boxes of the things that you're interested in. Or perhaps, from time to time, when you just notice behavior, you might just go into the classifications. It is a little bit manual. You've actually physically got to do it. And it would take, months, if not years, to really get a great list of people with all of their classifications attached. But it is something to consider. So let's say I had an event coming up and I wanted to advertise to all my astrophotographers. I can now go to matches. You'll see this button here, matches. So I'm going to hit this one that says show matches. And here I am. And I can do one of two things. I might want to send some communication, or I might want to export this list. And bear in mind, I'd expect you to have a list of hundreds, if not thousands. I've just got some examples. It's just a little operational challenge for me, not to show real email addresses or addresses and all that, email addresses, physical addresses, all that sort of stuff, and phone numbers. So these are all just made up, as you can tell by the names, al fresco and asphalt, etc. Let's look at some of the things I could do with these matches now. The first one is print matches. So maybe I just want to print this out. This can sometimes be handy if you want to have a phone list. Maybe I need to ring a whole heap of people, and I can just print this out and go through them, ring them, mark them off. The next one is tag. Now, what I can do here, you'll see I've got the 26 letters of the alphabet, and I can tag these guests. This is useful if you've got a running campaign, and let's say I've got my astrophotographers and I want to send out a communication today, and maybe I'm saying, hey, look, for the first time, once only offer, here is this offer. But of course, if I run this again in 6 months' time, I don't want to send that first time offer to the same people. So what I could do, I could tag all of these people with, let's say, the letter A. So they're all tagged now. Just going back to the template for a moment, this time I could say exclude any guest that had the tag, here it is, anyone who had the tag of A. So if I want to do a rolling campaign but not include the people I've already contacted, that's how that's done. Next one is labels. And as Agon said in the original Ghostbusters, print is dead. And I don't think many people send stuff in envelopes anymore, but if you do,
I bet you like to read a lot too.
Print is dead.
You can print some labels here. It is specific to a particular type of label. It's the Avery L7 blah, blah, blah there. I did some research yesterday, and those are still available, readily available. You can buy them online. Even if you're not sending letters, maybe you put keys in envelopes and things like that you leave out for latecomers, really handy for that sort of stuff rather than having to write it. So there's labels. The next one is form letters. Let's just click on that. What we would do, I want to send a form letter to all those people. And actually, just before I go there, one of the other great things about doing it from here is you can have one final glance down the list, and there may in fact be folks that you don't want to send this communication to, and you can simply take the check out of there. Now we'll go back to form letters. Just pick the form letter you want and send away. Now, if you are sending to 50 recipients or more, RMS is going to ask you to validate the emails. As I said before, we end up collecting a lot of rubbish emails. Maybe it's virtual emails from an OTA, maybe it's a dot, whatever. If you send lots of unvalidated emails, a couple of things are going to happen. First thing is a waste of time because people are never going to get it. It's going to start ending up in spam filters, all that sort of stuff. But if you repeatedly send large batches of unvalidated emails, so, emails that don't go anywhere, you will find that your mail server will eventually be blocked or blacklisted and you can't send anything out at all. Nobody will get anything. So it is worth it. It does cost, well, in Australia anyway, it's 4 cents per email. Probably sounds like a lot when you're sending thousands, but it's the difference between something that works and something that doesn't. So there's that. The next one is SMS. You might want to send an SMS out to folks, and you can create this very targeted list that you want to send out. So you'd have a targeted SMS for them, or send a campaign. Now this is for those folks that have taken out the EDM module, and here we can pick the campaign that we want to send out to. There's a really, really great example, and we can send this EDM out to all of those folks. Hit the send or schedule it to go later. So that's all of the sort of ways we can send this list of people, reservations, guests, how we can send them some communications. The other way that we can use the report writer is to export this data and create some reports. So I'm going to hit the export button. Here it is. And here's some of the templates that I've created earlier. But let's sort of have a quick look at how this works. What we would do, we want to add one now. So let me try and explain what's happened. So in the first stage, in the report writer, what we were doing was gathering a group of reservations or guests, and we use that criteria. Now we've got that list, and now we want to find out more information about that list. And we have literally every field in RMS available to us here. So remember we spoke before about client stats. So we might say, in this case, let's put number of visits, and I'm going to add that field. Now, I'm not saying how many visits they had to have. I'm asking the question, how many visits have they had? So when we produce this report, there will be a column, and against the reservation will be the number of times they're visited. So we'll add that one. We might also want to know what their average revenue is. So we click on that one as well. And we can just go mad, and we can just keep adding fields as we go. When did they come? When did they go? Just look at, there's literally hundreds and hundreds of fields. I'll just go back into the into this list, and there's a couple that I've created already. Let's have a look at this one here, my test report, and we'll just edit that one for a moment. And as you can see, look, these are all the fields I had. And if you really wanted to crunch some data, some really specific stuff, like, for example, the one we used about our astrophotographers, okay, so these are the people we've classified as astrophotographers, but how often do they come? What do they spend? What booking source did they find us by? Now, all of this sort of stuff that there is no standard report for, but you might want to know that information. So that's what this is all about. I did have another one. Let me have a look. So where's my astrophotography? Yeah, my stargazers. Let's have a look at that. So the sort of things that I wanted to know about them was the number of visits, the rate they paid, the booking source, what postcode they came from, therefore the region, and I wanted their name. All of that's there for me. Another one, and this is quite specific. Now, this came up in one of the forums, and there are quite a few forums on social media, and people talk about things like Facebook. And let's have a look at this one called in-house. Now, there's a report in RMS, and it's called the in-house report. And originally, I started using this, 20 years ago, and it was a very simple report. And the idea was it was used for the emergency services. So, you might print this, build it once a day or 4 times a day, or only when you need it. And it would be, if you had an emergency or you were doing an emergency drill, you would be able to produce this report. And it literally just said, the name of the guest, what room they were staying in, how many people, how many adults, children, blah, blah, blah. And I think mobile address. And that was literally all it was. So if you had an emergency service turn up, they say, look, I need to account for all of the people who should be here now, and you would be able to give this list. Now, over time, people, I guess, have requested changes, and certain new columns have turned up in this report. And one of them is really quirky and bizarre. It's loyalty type. Like you can imagine the fire chief saying, oh, the loyalty type, that's really important. So let's say you wanted to create your own in-house report. And in my case, I've said, well, I want to know their name, what room number, how many adults, how many children, and their mobile phone address. Now, because I've done all of this as templates, it's literally, maybe half a dozen clicks from start to finish. I'd argue it's almost quicker and easier than going into the actual report and building it. So these are all the sort of things you can do. And as I said, it gives you the ability to do this if you know a little bit about pivot charts. You don't even need to know any of that sort of stuff. You can just build some great reports and, using the sorting and grouping tools within Excel, you can just produce some great custom reports. Now, Liz, that is all I had to say on that topic today, but I'm hoping that there's a heap of really interesting questions that we can now go and have a look at. And it also gives me an opportunity to say that there are lots of resources to assist you with this. And if you want to, and I'll just go back into the system here, and you'll find that context-sensitive help, that is, help that relates to the screen you're on, is available simply by clicking this little question mark here. And you'll notice if I hit that now, it's going to open up to a help file about the report writer. And there's just a wealth of information in here. So if there's something you've missed or something specifically you want to go to, there's a great list of examples here of how you might use this. So the help resources are there. There's also the YouTube channel, which I create a few videos for that over the years. Haven't done one for a little while, but I will. I'll get stuck into it. But yeah, so there we go.
All right, so our first question is, what is the best way to create a targeted mailing list for different types of guests?
Yes, well, that's a great question. Let's go back into the report writer. And so we already talked about a couple. So if we look at guests, we can do it by sort of, the time of year you might want to stay. There's those classifications, but of course, if you haven't used classifications, that's not much good to you. There's another one called market segment, and that is one that is really easy to apply, and you might just break it down into, workers, sort of your corporate customers, families, singles, couples, whatever, maybe that's your market segment. You'd be able to target via that. The category they stayed in, I think, is a good one. Over here in this client stats, to be honest, I reckon this is one of the best ones, where you can say, I want to target my high spenders, my repeat offenders, those that come a lot, people who have stayed, more than such and such an amount of time. Regions is another one, like it's not much point saying, show me everyone who stayed here in 2 years' time. If, some of them are tourists from foreign countries, chances are they're never coming back to your country, let alone your town. So, to target into a region is not a bad idea as well. Is probably the way, some of the suggestions I would have. So, you would start off with, as I said before, you'd start off with reservations that were during a period, an arrival date range. You'd put that in, and then you'd start saying, right, well, I've got that, but now I only want to include, this and this and this and this. Booking source might be another one that you might say, well, show me all the people that came through, my association or my brand or whatever. Maybe I'll just go back to those folks. Now, we talked about validation. Somebody said, what is the cost associated to email validation? Now, I never like talking about costs on webinars because I'm aware that I've got an international audience, and some people will be cents and rupees and all sorts of stuff, American dollars. I'm not quite sure. I'm fairly sure that it only occurs when you have 50 emails or more, and I believe in Australia at least it's 4 cents per email that you're going to validate. So it's going to be comparable around the world to something like that. Now, where can we find a list of the available fields for exporting into a report? Now, that's really great. Now, there has been a glossary, and I am just going to go in here to the help file and type in the word glossary. And you'll see we've got one here called Merge Field Glossary, and this is fairly new. As we've just explored, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of fields. Now, which one do you want to use, and what does each field do? Because sometimes they can seem a little bit obscure, like translist. What does translist mean? Well, here's a nice explanation and the field you're looking for. So that's probably not a bad place to start. It's an exhaustive list, and I know Jen has been working on this for some time to get this together for you. So that's certainly one that you'd be able to take advantage of. Now, Lizzie, I think that's all the questions. I think we're done now. I think it's been a great session. People have been interacting. I hope everyone's got something from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget, if you ever need help with anything at all, you can just log a service request through 9plus, whether it's, anything that comes to mind straight after this session, when the replay hits your inbox a few hours from now, or a month down the track. The team is always very happy to help you get the most out of the product. So yeah, thanks so much for joining us today, everyone. And yeah, keep an eye out on your inbox for a replay of this session. It won't be very long before you can watch it.
Fantastic. Thanks to you, Lizzie. You've been fantastic. Jenna in the background, just tireless all the time, just a fantastic asset. And thanks everyone for coming along. See you next time.